In 1694, you had Don Diego de Vargas, who actually came to Castillo County, Colorado. So first written, documented, clearly verifiable, traceable. You know exactly. He came to Castillo County, came to the San Luis Valley. First, at least, you know, we know that Don Diego, who we think is the first European to come into Colorado, he came in 1694. So when it comes to Coronado, some people say, did Juan de Onate? I think Juan de Onate, he had an expedition. He might have branched off. What about the Coronado Expedition? There's 350 Spaniards. Maybe one of those men wandered off and went into the San Luis Valley. So I do not believe that the Coronado Expedition came through Castillo County. The official version of the Coronado Expedition is this path right here. So, if you can see, I mean, he goes up Mexico, goes up Arizona, crisscross New Mexico, and then goes into Texas, and then Oklahoma, and then Kansas. So, that's, you know, there seems to be maybe about an hour's drive. There seems to be a gap between the path that he went through New Mexico and Colorado. So it's like, oh, it's almost, you know, he almost came to the tip of the corner of Colorado. He didn't even come to the whole state. He didn't even come to the whole state, let alone the San Luis Valley. Now, he's a conquistador. He's an explorer. He's leading a large expedition, 350 Spanish soldiers and their spouses, slaves, and servants, plus 2,000 Mexican Indian allies, mostly warriors from Aztec, Purépecha. They also brought horses, mules, sheep, cattle, and maybe some pigs. The livestock, they're going to be eating a whole bunch of crap. So this is 1540. The Coronado Expedition happens in 1540. So this is the two, I guess, biggest possibilities of, you know, these. It could be Juan de Onate. It could be this Coronado character. Maybe Coronado can't. No, neither one of these two guys actually comes to the San Luis Valley. So, the official path, okay, well, maybe, you know, something else is going on. The official path doesn't put Coronado going through Colorado at all. So, he doesn't go to Colorado, doesn't go through the San Luis Valley. But, maybe something else happened. Maybe one of his men branched off. 3 of Coronado's men did make it to the Colorado River. So, there was, you know, the Colorado River. It was Alarcon, Alarcon, Diaz, and Cardenas. These 3 of Coronado's men are going to branch off, and they're going to go a different direction than the main expedition. But the Colorado River, that's not necessarily Colorado. Maybe about 10%, 25% of the Colorado River, you know, starts in Colorado, but most of the Colorado River is in Nevada, California, and Arizona. I think it's the border of Arizona and California for the longest time. The Grand Canyon in Arizona is carved out by the Colorado River. So most of the Colorado River is not in Colorado. So just because these 3 men went to the Colorado River, and okay, let's assume that maybe it was over here, maybe they did, you know, crisscross to where it could have been close to, where else could they have crossed, right? Where else could they have gone? I'm not going to put it, you know, out of the realm of possibility, but you got to find a narrative, right? The whole idea of history was that somebody wrote this shit down, and you got to verify this narrative. And I would probably trust anybody who wrote down like 20 pages of all their experiences, even if it was after the fact. It'd be better if they were writing during the fact, but, you know, maybe taking little notes during the fact so that way they could, you know, their later narrative will be 100% way better. But there's an infinite amount of possibilities. So the expedition is about an hour's drive away from Colorado's border, right? And so they could have broke away with New Mexico. They could have gone from Kansas. They could have gone from Oklahoma or Texas, right? There's an infinite amount of ways that they could have crisscrossed and gone up to the Colorado River up in Colorado, which is in the northwest part of the state. So even if, let's assume those 3 men had passed through the San Luis Valley, they didn't make it a part of their narratives. They didn't say, Coronado, you got to look at this place. You got the Ute Mountain, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. You got the Rio Grande headwaters. Oh, my God, you know, all this elk and buffalo and what have you. They didn't say, come to the San Luis Valley. So it wasn't Coronado. If you could try to say that one of those 3 men went to the San Luis Valley. but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find those three men to say it, or anybody that said they went to the San Luis Valley, because they didn't go through the San Luis Valley. Now, I don't even know why anybody would want Coronado to march through their town. The reason why he's historically significant, because he was a trailblazer, a pioneer, right? And if you're a soldier, I bet that was exciting. But they were raping and killing and burning Native Americans at the stake. They had all those livestock. They had to get food. They were robbing all these natives. They had the beginning, the wealth that they started out with, but then once they got up out there, then they would have to steal in order to carry on with their expedition. And what was the whole point? The whole point was King Charles V. King Charles V is the one that started the triangular African slave trade. So this big slave trading low-life piece of shit, Charles V, who's, a Catholic, so is that Christian to have African slaves? So he's a, diehard Catholic. The Inquisition is going on during this day. 1540 is when De Soto is plundering Southeast America, the United States. So the Spanish is all over the Americas, right? The Spanish were the first ones, but the Spanish are in Southwest America, they're in Southeast America, the Spanish in, modern day United States of America. So the Charles V wanted to plunder. He did a successful raid against the Aztec and the Incas, right? You had Hernan Cortez and Pizarro, who went ahead, Francisco Pizarro and Hernan Cortez, right? Who sacked the Inca and the Aztec empires, these big, large Native American civilizations. The Spanish came here, found the biggest civilizations, and just, massacred and enslaved the people and robbed them. And that made Charles V, the Spanish king, the Holy Roman Emperor of the House of Habsburgs, the King of Spain, of Castile and Aragon from 1516 to 1556, also the King of Germany and Italy, from 1519 to 1556. Very, very rich. It was King Charles V that plundered Aztec and Inca empires. So it was King Charles V was why Coronado was marching up through the United States. For white Spanish King to Charles V, white Coronado went around and killed a lot of brown native peoples. And so, let's see, what else happened? So you have King Charles V is a Spanish king. This is the name that Coronado is going when he's marching through, New Mexico and all these other places. So King Charles V, he got all this wealth from the Aztec and the Incas, but he's dependent on the gold and silver and whatever precious metals he could take from the Americas. Yeah, it's causing inflation and shit. King Charles V don't care. King Charles V got his gold, he got his silver, right? And also Islam is a big threat during this day, so, King Charles V thinks he's doing God's work and spreading Christianity all over the place. So you had Catholic churches and missionaries and Franciscans and what have you that were marching with these men. So they're spreading Christianity, and it was the Jesuits, actually, that wrote a lot of this stuff down. So the Coronado Expedition is going to be a massive business failure. Coronado is going to be disgraced. He's put on trial for his cruelties. Eventually, he's just going to work as a low-level state employee, and we're never going to hear from Coronado ever again. The narratives that we get out of the expedition are from the soldiers who wanted to get another expedition going. So Coronado was not here in the San Luis Valley. So let's see, declared Martin Luther an outlaw. So the Spanish King Charles V, he's Mr. Inquisition, Holy Roman Emperor, King of Spain, King of Germany, King of Italy, King of everything, right? The House of Habsburgs. He declares Martin Luther an outlaw at the 1521 Diet of Worms. So the Diet is like Parliament, Worms is a city. So 1521, the Spanish King Charles V says Martin Luther, a Protestant's an outlaw. He's interpreting the Bible for himself. Well, fuck his life. So he's robbing people. He started the triangular African slave trade. He's looking for another Inca Aztec empire to plunder to retain his power in Europe. So he's able to put up a lot of capital to do these expeditions, but these expeditions are dependent and they must find an empire, Inca Aztec empire, of which to deplete their gold, silver, and oh, by the way, we're Christians. Oh, by the way, we're Christians. So, we got to make sure we leave that message all over the place. Typically, the way that King Charles V had fought all of his imperial wars, They were fought by the German Landsknechte, the Spanish Tercios, the Burgundian Knights, the Italian Condottieri, and that's who fought the Italian, the Imperial Wars were the Condottieri, the Knights, the Tercios, and the Landsknechte. So by Germans, Spanish, Burgundian, Italian citizens. So Coronado's not here, for good causes. They didn't need people to come to America to colonize and create a nice, pleasant society in America. They want to come to America and rob the fuck out of America and then get the hell out of Dodge. Steal the gold, steal the silver. If there is another civilization, then just kill their people, take over their buildings, and put them into slavery. King Charles V was not opposed to any of these things. And the shit that Hernan Cortez, Pizarro, De Soto, these are the most bloodiest, sickest, Hernan Cortez, he didn't just sack the Aztec in Mexico. He burnt their books and their culture so nobody knew what the fuck they were even about. So they weren't just destroying the people, they were destroying the history of the people. So, some people say, well, the Coronado Expedition's great history. The Coronado Expedition destroyed history. And the reason why that's why it's historical, because history is when you go, you jut left or you jut right. There's a major change in the sea, right? The temperature of the sea, there's a sea change. So Coronado is not here in the San Luis Valley. The official thing doesn't even have him going into Colorado. The three of his men goes to the Colorado River. And perhaps they, could have, but they never mentioned it, and they never told Coronado himself, so he never came through the San Luis Valley. It's not a part of any of their narratives. And so, again, not only is Coronado not a part of Colorado-Castillo County history, but you wouldn't want Coronado, the expedition, to be a part of the history. Coronado forced himself and his men on the Tiwa natives at Kufor, at Alcanfor Gufor. So this Coronado piece of shit, he's a murderous, bloody, just a conquistador, just trying to come in and steal shit. So he goes, in the beginning of the expedition, they need to get some corn to the corn stores, and so they go to the Tiwa natives in Kufor. This is near Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the chief, who they called Juan Alaman, the name is Xauian. Spanish, Spanishification, his name. So this Juan Alaman, Chief Juan Alaman of the Tiwa natives at Kufor, did not say that Coronado could come in, but instead Coronado, with all of his men, forced everybody in Kufor to leave with just the clothes on their back. Well, at least one woman was raped. This is during the winter of 1540 to 41. His army found themselves in conflict with the Rio Grande natives, and that led to the brutal Taigou War, the Tiguex. So part du, that's Taigou, the Taigou War. So the Taigou War is the first named war between Europeans and natives. So there's a great, legacy for Coronado. The very first battle between the white European imperialist colonizing bastards and the brown-skinned Native Americans was the Taigou War of Coronado. So that's, okay, fantastic. And now, Coronado, he fights it's terrible, right? So Coronado fights against the 12 pueblos of the Tiwa Indians and Juan Alaman. And he's looking for estates, for encomiendas, for forced labor estates. So he wants the land, right? The land is definitely, but what? Well, the Tiwas, they retaliated. They were pissed off. Coronado, he had to feed all of his men, so he has to rob all these people. He has no other choice, right? King Charles V gave him a certain amount of money, but not infinite amount of money. So he had 350 Spanish soldiers, spouses, slaves, servants, 2,000 Mexican Indian allies, mostly warriors from the Aztec Pecha, where they brought, did they come on their own? Maybe they're all slaves. And then the horses, mules, sheep, cattle, pigs. The horses are going to be good for the Utes, because the Utes are going to get some horses, and then the Comanches are going to be the lord of the plains around the San Luis Valley. But there wasn't no Spanish in the San Luis Valley, at least not up until 1694. So, okay, Coronado's fighting with the Taiwan natives. He's in, let's see, near Albuquerque, New Mexico. Also, there's the Rio Grande natives, the Taigua War. So he's kind of fighting some Pueblo natives. He's fighting New Mexican natives. He's fighting maybe Texas with the Rio Grande. So the Taiwas, they're going to, back in the beginning, December 1540, they retaliated. The Taiwas killed 50 horses and mules of the Spanish. Well, Coronado didn't mind, killing the Native Americans, but if you kill one of his horses or one of his mules, well, he declares this is actual, quote, fire and blood and guts and blood and more blood. So he's just so pissed off he can't even see straight. Fire, blood, guts, blood, and more blood. So just like Donald Trump declaring fire and fury, right? Now we're going to have to go all ape shit, massacred everybody at Arenal, A-R-E-N-A-L. Everybody at Arenal is going to be massacred and killed. So they took over Kufor, killed them at Kufor, killed them at Arenal, including 30 Taiwas who the Spaniards burned alive at the stake. So Arenal, they're not just going to kill everybody, they're going to burn them at the stake. They could have, showed mercy. They could have enslaved. They could have done something. But no, they burned them like a witch, right? Hey, look at them. They got to send a message to all the other natives. Here comes Coronado. He's killing and plundering and murdering everybody. So this white Coronado, who was sent by a white king, is killing all these brown people. They fortified themselves at Mojo, but ran out of water, tried to sneak away, but was slaughtered by Spaniards, every single last one of them. So the ones at Arenal who didn't want to get burnt at the stake goes to Mojo. So he killed the Taiwa at Mojo. Coronado killed the Taiwa at Arenal. Coronado killed the Taiwa at Kufor. Why would you want Coronado, the legacy of Coronado, to go through the San Luis Valley? Good thing Coronado didn't go through the San Luis Valley, destroying history, destroying peoples, destroying cultures. So overall, it was a total failure as a business venture. There is something about the history of the thing. So, okay, we got some history, right? He came through and he wrote some shit down on paper, but he went through New Mexico, so it's not Colorado. But Coronado's going to be put on trial, and he's going to be, basically, what the fuck, Coronado? King Charles V was relying on you to find some silver and gold or some Aztec and Inca empire, but you didn't do it. You didn't do it, did you, Coronado? So he was made to work at some low-level state position afterwards. So total failure as a business venture, right? Did they colonize? Did they try to set up any societies? They could have integrated the Native Americans, right? They could have made them Spanish citizens, been like the Romans. When the Romans conquered a new territory, they incorporated them as, Roman citizens. We got American Samoa. We got Puerto Rico. We got all these territories, and we don't even allow them to be American citizens. Nope, no, you're not an American, but you're occupying us. Yeah, I know, because you're, colonized. You're second-class citizens. You're not Americans. So the Spaniards could have done so many, million different things, but it was just so myopic and just so bloodthirsty and barbaric. They needed to steal and plunder, and so they got a bunch of fucking men, and they marched, north into Kansas to look for Cibola or Quivara or, the Fountain of Youth or whatever, the City of Gold or the City of Silver. They didn't find none of this shit. They found none of this. So Coronado, during his day, Coronado was a big loser. His contemporaries, they judged him very harshly because of it. And if there's nothing to be found, what the fuck could he have done? But when Coronado had returned, right, so he didn't just go straight to Mexico. He had to come back through, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico. When he comes back, he's going to go through the Towa. So first he had the Taiwa natives, and he killed all the Taiwas all over the place, right? Maybe one or two survived, but then he comes across the Towa, T-O-W-A, not T-I-W-A. So the Towa Indians of Jemez and Pico and Tiwas, the Taiwas, so there was some Taiwas. So there was a few Taiwas still living, right? A few Taiwas held on. So the Towa Indian villages of Jemez and Peso and the Taiwas, they warred against Coronado until April 1542, and then Coronado was just sick of this shit, just keeps having to fight all these damn natives, hasn't found no gold, hasn't found no silver, fighting the, poor natives. Then he went back. So the Taiwas actually kicked his ass. Or not the, well, they did, a couple of the surviving Taiwas, but the Towas. So the Towas are the big success story of the Coronado narrative. What happened in this area? Coronado tried to fucking conquer us, and he didn't find nothing of value, and he went back home, and then maybe he got tired of the Towas kicking his ass. And the Spaniards won't, return back into, the southwestern United States for another 50, 60 years. So the overview isn't that Coronado is great. There's a lot of history that's associated with it. But Hitler created history, Ted Bundy murders people, just for the sake of history. We got to do this. Why? For the sake of history. You could have, for the sake of history, instead of plundering and robbing, you could have just sent a bunch of people and just documented what the hell was going on. That would have been good for the sake of history. So, the overview, Coronado comes, right, for very shitty purposes for King Charles V, kills the Taiwan natives just because he wanted to steal their stuff and they resisted. The survivors were the ones who were sent packing with nothing but the shirts on their backs. And then he burned the Taiwas at the stake like they're a bunch of witches. And the heroes of the Coronado Expedition are the Towa natives. The Towa natives who lived in America were here. This is their home. This is their people. Who the fuck are you, white man? Who the fuck are you, Coronado? Get the fuck out of here. Go back to the Spanish Mexico City. Get the fuck out of here. Go back to your fucking nation. You're not welcome here. That's what the Towa natives of Jimenez and Paco and Peso, whatever, P-E-C-O. So, yeah, the Towa natives, they weren't having it. So if the Towa natives, that would be interesting. Did the Towa natives come to the San Luis Valley? I would like to know about that. I would like to know if the Towa natives came to the... Was there some sort of missionary that was amongst the Towa natives and just talked about their culture and talked about their language? That would be interesting. That would be good for history. So, yeah, Coronado did not come into Castillo County. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So, yeah. And, Viva Towa natives. Hell yeah, Towas. I hear you, Towa. I don't know if you're still around. Somebody stole Coronado's foot, the statue. They still have the entrada. They still, do this big Spanish march through the fucking... You gotta stop that shit. You gotta knock that shit off. Fucking colonizing imperialists, the fucking Spanish. This is terrible. This is nothing, Well, what do we do? What the fuck are we doing here? So yeah, get the hell out of here, Coronado. And then we need to develop the Towa natives. That's what we got to work on. The Towa natives. We got to work on integration. We got to work on, getting a good society. Maybe get some democracy, integration. Anyways, 9:40 a.m. John Master, Saturday, May 23rd, 2020. Peace. Takes like fucking 50 times fucking to push this goddamn button to turn